You learning Hachzek Musar Yomi Pirkei Avos with Rabbeinu Yoina. We begin the fifth Mishna of the first Perek of Pirkei Avos. Says the Mishna, Yosi ben Yochanan ish Yushalayim Omer. Yosi ben Yochanan, the man from Yushalayim, he used to say, Yehei beischa patuach lervacha. Your house should be open wide. V'aniyim b'nei beischa. And aniyim should frequent your house. You should not talk excessively with women. Amru, with your own wife. Certainly with the wife of your friend. And we'll see what this means, of course. From here, the Chachamim taught us, as long as a woman increases the talking with a woman, he causes evil to himself, and so the Rabbeinu Yoina over here begins by explaining what does this mean. What does this mean? It means everyone should have a place, everyone should be comfortable in your house. Another pshat, your house should be open to everyone like the house of Avram Avinu. He lived in a wide open area on the road. So everyone should find that they could come to your house. It's the big signs. Come here. As it says about Eev, so two pshatim, whether it means everyone should be comfortable, or whether it means mamish like Avram Avinu, you should set up. Apologies. Something on the keyboard. You should set up your house in a place that everyone sees it and can come and be your guest. Number two, should be members of your household. Says Rabbeinu Yoina, two ways of explaining this Mishnah. Number one, if you're going to buy an Eved and support them, you should instead employ Aniyim and give them work. Number one, it's not going to cost as much money. So it comes out you gain and you're doing a mitzvah. This is a big yesod. Everything's a big yesod. But we could play this out in real life. Someone's going to say, who has avadim nowadays? It's true. But now what we're seeing is, if you have an opportunity to do something, you're hiring a worker, and you could hire a guy, or you could hire an ani, and the ani, you're going to get a mitzvah, and you're going to gain, because they'll give you a cheaper job. The Mishna on Avos is teaching you have a special reason to use that ani. Pshat number one. Pshat number two, Pir Shachar, should be comfortable in your house. They shouldn't be embarrassed. You should always be happy with them. You should allow them to have whatever they need in your house. You should treat aniyim like the members of your house. And of course, we know stories of all our gedalim that people would frequent their house. They felt like the children, just like a son would go to the fridge and take out a drink. The ani would do the same, a high and lofty level. But that's what the Mishnah is teaching us we have to aspire to. And now, you should not increase talking with a woman. They hear avera bittul Torah, cause you to think of woman and thereby not learn enough Torah. But now the Mishnah continued, be'ishta, your own wife, kal v'chaymer be'ishes chaverei. Certainly someone else's wife. And of course this is difficult. What does it mean? You shouldn't talk excessively with your own wife. So starts over Rabbeinu Yoina by quoting the Pshat and Rashi, who says, obviously Rav Nosson is a different girsa. It means ishtay nida. It means when one's wife is a nida, you shouldn't talk excessively with her. We know that there's all the dinim of archakos of a nida. You can't joke around with her. You can't touch her. You can't pass things to her. So by an ishtay nida, you should be careful. Says Rashi, quoting the obvious Rav Nosson. And certainly any other woman you shouldn't joke around with, and you shouldn't do all these things to any other woman. Why? Because it causes Yitzhak Hara to increase, etc., etc. What's the kol shekain? Mayim genuvim min taku. That what? Stolen waters are more desirous, are more sweet, and therefore you're going to come to do an Aveira. That's pshat of Rashi. Says Rabbeinu Yoina v'nir lefarish k'pshutai, I can give you a pashut pshat. Be'ishtay amru. It means your own wife. Startling revelation. Don't talk excessively with your own wife. Why? Should not be accustomed to being with her always. You You shouldn't be together intimately with your wife all the time. One should not be with his wife for his own enjoyment, only to be Mekayim the mitzvah. And of course, this is a pretty high and lofty level, as he himself explains, that this is Lahafish bin Ad ben Behema, as the Gemara and Brachas teach us, Gabi Baal Kari, that the reason they originally made a takana of a Baal Kari can't learn in the Avon and whatnot was that one shouldn't become a Baal Kari all the time. One should not be sleeping with his wife excessively, like a tarnago, like a chicken. And this is midas aprisha v'il madrikas elyonis. It brings to high and lofty levels. Aprisha maybe l'dei ta'ira. So, in as much as it sounds like a very high level, we certainly could take out of here nuggets as we always can, and as we've been learning to accustom ourselves, as we've been learning the great Musar Sfarim, Mesil Sishar, Rabbeinu B'chayai, that of course, when we see a high and lofty levels, we take out of it a little bit to us, and we start to realize that if Rabbeinu Yoina is saying that being excessively with one's life could eventually bring to Aveira, we see how incredibly important Gedarim in the area of Arayas are, and that's what he continues to explain. Meaning to say, if you're excessively with women, what happens? You cause the Yetzer Hara, which is called Ra, evil, to get great. Hashem called it bad. This person is causing evil to himself. Sometimes we tell our kids, you caused it to yourself. So Hashem, Rabbeinu Yoina is telling us, we're bringing this upon ourselves. You're creating a place, via the talking excessively with women, via the hanging out with women, via the watching, the looking at sights of women, says Rabbeinu Yoina. You're causing the Yetzer Hara to leech on to you, and increasing more than other people. Even regular people, the Yetzer Hara sometimes win. Says Rabbeinu Yoina, so if you're going to go and you're going to hang out with women and you're going to talk excessively with women, you're giving the Yetzer Hara the upper hand. But if not, it's not going to happen. And it doesn't happen by itself. So says Rabbeinu Yoina, how incredibly important we have to be. The Yetzer Hara always has a pretty big upper hand. He's quite a cunning and disastrous fellow. And thereby, when we go and we hang out with women and look and excessively and joke and whatnot, we're giving the Yetzer Hara more and more and more life to leech on to ourselves. And now what happens next? Why? Says Rabbeinu Yoina, a very important line. Sometimes one says, what's the big deal? I still learn, I still daven. Says Rabbeinu Yoina, you're not being honest. When your heart is hanging out with the woman, when your heart is looking at the woman, your mind cannot be entire. There are two thoughts that the mind cannot grasp as one. And finally, what happens? Rahman al-Litzan says, one eventually comes to sin. Once he is brazen enough to converse with women, he eventually does a sin, and he goes to the depths of Gehenim. And this really just explains, unfortunately, all the scandals of the world that were, unfortunately, perhaps numb to. Where does it come from? We wonder, how could it be? How could it be? And the answer is, when you're marbe sicha, when you increase one's conversation and one's interactions with women, what happens is it slowly seeps in, it slowly grabs hold, and it slowly causes one to be pulled down into sin. Says Rabbeinu Yoina, death will remove a person from life in this temporary world. It's worse than death. When you die, you just die from this world, but the woman can cause you to die from both worlds. That's what it means. Bitter from death, something that we have to be extremely careful about. And of course, the Hachzek that we have to take in our world of technology and of the availability of both excessive talk, excessive sight, excessive everything with women, we have to be careful. It's something that's a marmi maves, incredible words, more bitter than death. And we conclude, says Rabbeinu Yoina, a woman is a snare, her heart is a net. When you look at a woman, what happens? He becomes ensnared in her tent, in asher hi mitzayda, which is her which is her trap. And he can't escape. A person sees what his heart desires. And that moment, at the moment of temptation, at the moment when the trap is ensnaring you, you can't see clearly. You can't see what will happen. Everyone says, I'm not going to sin, I'm greater than that, I'm not going to fall. But when when you're in the snare, when you're in the trap, you're blinded, you can't see what's going to happen at the end of the time. As a Paitan says, the foolish dove goes in the desert, she sees the food but not the trap. It walks straight into the trap. And Rahman al-Islan, the more that we're around women and we talk to women and we avail ourselves to a woman, says Rabbeinu Yaina, we're this blind and foolish dove walking around and slowly or quickly, Rahman al-Islan, falling into the trap. Her heart is an at, as Adam, when she desires a man in her heart, it's impossible that she's not going to eventually sin with him. Even if he doesn't really desire her, because his bad fortune causes her to desire him, and she's going to slowly succor him. And finally, Asurim Yadao, her arms are chains. For if she holds him in her arms, that's it, he's in jail. He has no hope. He who's pleasing to Hashem escapes, but the sinner, the chayte, is caught by her. Tzadikim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu Shaimrim. Ve'ein mizam lehem davar. Baruch Hashem, tzadikim. I guess we could all hope that we're in that boat, but we still have to be most careful. But Hashem will eventually guard and not prepare them. Davar sheyuchlu likashal by. Avala chayte shein mischaret. What's the chayte? And with these incredible words we conclude. The chayte is he she'enoi misrachek. He doesn't stay far away. Midrachim run from these evil ways. Ve'in libo shalem. And his heart is not perfect. Mizdamin love inyan kazeh. So what's the answer? The answer is misrachek, to stay far and far away, and thereby hopefully be able to stay clean from the snares of the Yetzer Hara. We'll pick it up from the 6th Mishnah the next year. B'siyata Dishmaya.